And catchy intro. Hey everyone, Keegan here from the Media Men, and joining me today is both Ben and Lucas. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
That's Ben.
What's going on?
And that's Lucas. Today we're going to be diving into our thoughts, feelings, speculations about Season 1 of Arcane. First off, this is going to be chock full of spoilers, so if you don't want those, then this isn't the video for you yet. Please go watch the show and then come back to the discussion, because right out of the gate, I want to say that I thought this show was incredible, basically from start to finish. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely made with like another season in mind, or at least it kind of feels like almost half a season, but it's really good. And I couldn't believe how good it was considering the track record of video game adaptations. So it's pretty
Yeah, I think
awesome.
that's important to say is that we do not often get a good video game adaptation, so I think that makes this stand out just even more.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the better things I've watched recently, and any sort of gripes I had with the show were very small, so and things that were easy to overlook because of the other things being so great about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So like just some high level pros that I have, and then I was gonna go into like some like specific moments that I thought hit really well, and then kind of follow up with maybe like any cons or like little nitpicky things that I had, and then after that maybe some speculation of some stuff in season two. So first off, the music I think is matched absolutely perfectly. The scene feels explicitly crafted around the music and the tension of the scene. I also think.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I think the music. I'm not someone who's as like keen to like music making or breaking a lot of things as I think you guys are. It definitely adds an element to me a lot of times, but this show specifically, it struck me in a way that like it was much more impactful than it normally feels to me. It's not something that's just like it was far from just background noise. It was very much deliberate every step of the way, as you said, and it really added to the feeling and depth of the show, I think.
Yeah, the animation I think also looks amazing. Like pretty much every scene in this show I thought was cinematic at some point. The all the characters I thought were very surprisingly fleshed out. They all pretty much have backstories and tensions, and the character interactions between each other are really impactful, and I think that shines through the show having such intricate detail woven in. Those are kind of the big pros that I had for it. Kind of going into some of the moments that I thought were really good was just right out of episode one at the very beginning when they enter the Undercity. You can really feel the grittiness of the city, and I think that shines through. But then, really, episode three obviously is the turning point that kind of punches you in the face, where you realize that this show is actually a really dark tone. It always kind of had that vibe, but you don't really, it's not really in the forefront of the show until I think episode three, when they end up going through the scene to try to save Vander. I think it can come off as like kind of a cheap way to extract a reaction from the audience to kill kids if it isn't done properly. But I think the show absolutely nails it, and it's a building block of Jinx and her character throughout the whole show, and I think it's going to be part of her personality just forever.
Yeah, I don't know. You kind of see over the course of the show, she seems to get more unstable, like not less, even when V comes back into her life. So, not going too well for her. And I was surprised that they did kill off those characters and how they basically made it this little girl's fault. I mean, she didn't do it on purpose, obviously, but she killed her friends and almost killed her sister and killed Vander.
Yeah, I think
Or put Banner in a position to where in a bad spot that
he ended up dying
he
as
ended
well.
up getting it. Yeah. So
The other
it's understandable why she'd be so mad at Powder, and Powder's obviously upset because she doesn't understand what happened. And
Yeah,
the other thing about that scene that stands out to me is like they established, I think, and I didn't really expect it prior to this, but they established the sort of relationship between Vander and Silco that adds a depth and like, and I'm not so sure in this show how dead the dead will stay. It seems like a show where something along those lines is a possibility of something to come back. But whether or not Vander is able to come back in some regard, I think it's interesting to have like to know that there was one time a common ground between Silco's line of thought and Vander's, and therefore like the other characters that we met early on in the show. So like I think that also made it very intriguing that there is something more here, and it just adds to the depth of the story again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think the whole show, I think the directors actually talked about it. The show is a take on duality, and everybody kind of has an opposite of each other, and there are certain characters that have opposites with more than one character. Obviously, I think a good example, an easy example, is Jinx and V are opposites. Jace is opposite to Heimerdinger, but he's also kind of opposite to Victor, and I think that kind of plays off a couple ways here and there. V's fight on the walkway in episode 3 when trying to save Vander, I thought was absolutely incredible. That was one of my favorite fights in the whole show, and it's so intense. I actually rewatched it, and I thought it was like a 10 to 15 minute scene, but it's only like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So I obviously my heart raced during that scene, so it felt a lot longer to me at the time.
That fight is excellent, just because given the situation that they're in, you don't really know, I guess, who's gonna live, and also just seeing her fight all those people was just really cool. Something I thought this show did really, really well, which can go really poorly depending on who's writing it, was how they dealt with all the political aspects of it. Just because they sort of acknowledge in the show that a big part of the reason the Undercity sucks so much is because the main city or whatever kind of ignored it, doesn't fund it. So all these people are sort of scraping by. So they resent the council and the people making those decisions, and then the council in turn resents them. And you kind of see how the council isn't necessarily malicious towards those in the Undercity, in a sense that they don't think that they have any value. It's more of like a laissez-faire, like they just don't understand like the consequences of their actions, or like what's happened. But then you also have Silco, who is like the most extreme version of that kind of rebellion that the Undercity is going through. And you can see how he got to that point, but you also don't agree with the way that he's going about it, because he's basically destroying his own town to get revenge on the council and all them. And I thought, as somebody who myself is like pays a lot of attention to politics and history and stuff, I thought it was really interesting how they handled that, how there's a lot of like personal conflicts, but there's also like an overarching systemic conflict where people in charge aren't necessarily making the right decisions. And I don't know, I thought that was really cool, and that could have easily gone really badly and made the show really divisive, and it didn't, and I felt like they just handled it really well.
I do think that as the season progressed, you sort of saw a manifestation of ideas amongst the council, though, as more and more acts of perceived aggression from the Undercity began happening to Piltover up top. They started the council started saying more and more things that were directly like, we don't want them, or like they were condemning them and sort of saying that nothing of value comes from there or anything like that. And I agree, it wasn't like that at first, but it was interesting to see how like they had a role in creating, the higher ups don't even want to take responsibility for it all. And it was interesting. I agree, it's interesting that they brought that political element to it, but it wasn't like it was trying to speak on any real world politics. It was very contained within the show, which I think is one way to avoid that sort of fine line that makes it divisive, I think. And so I agree that it definitely added a good amount of drama to what was going on. And it made you unsure at times sort of who to root for.
Yeah, it made you kind of see both sides of the situation. And yeah, like you said, I mean, definitely progressed into where they resented the Undercity more and more. Something I thought was interesting about that was losing the name of one of the people who founded it, the little puppy man.
Heimerdinger?
But Heimerdinger, yeah.
And little puppy man. You heard it here,
little
folks.
Puppy man, yeah. And Jace is basically like, look, like humans don't live hundreds of years. Like we don't have time to like wait for progress. And it kind of shows that as good intended as Heimerdinger is, he actually was a big part of the problem, because he's set this up in such a way to where change comes very, very slowly, and that is fine if you don't have to bear the brunt of the consequences when the change happens that slowly. But then Jace brought up the good point, even though you see kind of Jace going down a not so great path at certain points, but you can kind of you understand that perspective where it's like we don't have time to sit around here and waiting to make things better, because we have short lifespans, at least relatively speaking.
Yeah.
We don't have hundreds of years to test this hex tech to start improving things. And I thought that was actually a really interesting point. And like you can make parallels to real world politics, but you also don't have to, because I think that the way that the show sets itself up, it's not necessarily trying to comment on real world politics, but it does take historical elements. I mean, maybe
Sure.
not intentionally.
Sure. It's just
But
human nature.
yeah, I mean, just like basic observation of history could make you recreate it in this sort of way. Just how all this sorts of thing happen, how extremism comes and rises, and it just makes society worse overall. But
Yeah, I think
thought they
one of
handled
the
that
things
really well.
about the politics that really stood out to me there too was I didn't know what decision I would have made in some of those certain circumstances. Like when, for example, V and Caitlin walk into the council and they're arguing about what to do. Are they going to go to war with the Undercity? Are they going to make peace? I thought both sides brought very valid arguments for either decision, and I really wouldn't have had an answer, I don't think, for that.
No, I don't think so either, especially given like the position that the other council members may have held too. Maybe the right thing would have been to like, okay, let's put more funding into the inner city. Let's try to improve these people's lives. But at the same time, no one on the council is going to be on board for that. So they had to make a decision that would have worked with the time that they were allotted, which I guess was either invade or let
I
them
think they
have
had to
their
make a
own.
split decision there.
And on top of
Yeah.
that split decision, they were making it with very limited information because as much information as they thought they had, not a lot of it was misconstrued or false placed information. So I think that makes it even more difficult because some people might get stern opinions based on the information they have, but like one fact could change that person's opinion very quickly. And they just didn't have that time or information to act on.
Yeah, you can see the council getting radicalized, and you can also see people under Silco getting more and more radicalized as well. And they're both just making it worse for all the people caught in the crossfire, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I do know, I think my favorite fight in the whole season was the Echo Jinx fight. I thought that was incredible. The way Echo had a knowledge of how to take out Jinx from a game they used to play as kids. They go through literally every range of emotion from the beginning of that fight to the end of it, where it's anger, then it's almost humor like, and then it's extreme depression. And I thought that was just incredibly well done. The flashbacks to when they were kids throughout the scene, I thought played a very interesting role. And I don't want to get into spoilers of the game necessarily, but that does play a part into what Echo is known to do in League of Legends. So I thought that was excellently executed.
Yeah, I think if you know League of Legends, and I don't know it super well, but you just looking at like the character descriptions and stuff in the game, you can kind of see where some of these characters are going, and I think that they're doing a really good job building that up. Yeah, I love that fight too. I like how they intercut it with like the games that they used to play. I was surprisingly emotional given how little we actually saw Echo in the beginning of the show.
Agreed.
And then, they ended up being a really good character later on. They were basically the example, or Echo was, of how to handle this situation as correctly as possible given the means. And then you had Silco on one end and then the council on the other end, kind of ruining everything.
Yeah. I thought the end was incredibly heartbreaking in seeing everything culminate the way it did. They left it in a place where I think war is clearly the only option now. And I wouldn't actually be surprised to see a small time jump in season 2 where they start off showing some of the ramifications that have already come to pass in Piltover since the two went to war. Maybe not a long period, but maybe 6 months later or 4 months later or something, and all the characters have definitively taken sides at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this action by Jinx launching it into the council basically puts her into too far gone territory.
It puts the entire Undercity in too far gone territory, I think, because they're going to relate that one action of that one person to the people as a whole.
Yeah, and that really sucks because, I mean, Jinx at this point has become a very, like, I mean, there's a lot psychologically wrong, but in that way, she's also being very self-serving and kind of screwing over everybody else. I'm not sure how much she actually personally cares about the Undercity. I think Silco maybe does in sort of a twisted way. But if there was any chance for peace, that went out the window when she fired.
Well, I was gonna say, she turned Piltover up top upside down, but she also turned the Undercity upside down because Silco's now out of the picture too. So both sides of the fence are going to be in complete dismay now, wherever it picks up, whether there's a time jump or not. And I could definitely see them playing it either way. But that was definitely one of the of cliffhangers I can remember in my lifetime. That was one of the biggest. Like, are you kidding me? That's where you're going to leave us?
I know. I thought I was like,
It doesn't get much bigger or grander than that. Of a what's good next? We'll see.
yeah. The fact that they ended there though shows an immense confidence in the quality of this.
Yes.
That's also why I think maybe this was like maybe not half a season, but I think that they've probably already made more episodes to this, just based on the way
I'm sure
that
they've
it
outlined
ended.
it.
Or they've outlined it and they're like, okay, we'll stop here. It's interesting that they didn't wrap it up in such a way that it could have ended in one season, but then they keep going because there's more to explore. But like, no, the story is like this feels like the first act of
Agreed.
the whole TV show. So I might
it's
get
nice to
first
see
season
that
of that
they
first,
it felt like they had a vision for it. You know, they didn't just try to wrap it up after season one because it's like I don't know if we're gonna get canceled or not, or if we're gonna get more than one season. But they said, you know what, we're gonna make a great season one, and if it doesn't get picked up, it doesn't get picked up. So be it. But we have enough confidence and faith that this is something good enough to get picked up for a second season. I
You
think.
just have to hope it doesn't fall. A lot of shows that do start off with a bang like this in season one do tend to dig themselves in too deep of a plot hole to get out of.
I could
And
definitely see that being the case. It'll be hard to top this one. I'm just hoping for it to be pretty much as good.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they continue the story in a satisfying way, I mean, don't get like high on your own hype, I guess. Just continue with the outline that you have, because clearly what you have is working so far. I mean, it could always suck later, but I'm skeptical that because I feel like they nailed almost every decision. So
It's
I would
hard
be
to believe,
surprised
but
if it just fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
Something else that was really cool was the animation.
Yeah.
I normally do not like 3D animation, especially when it's, but actually particularly specifically when it's anime inspired, which I think the show is, because a lot of the time it just doesn't work. You know, the artistic direction isn't there. The textures look plasticky. The movements look jittery, but here they decided to keep I guess your normal 24 frames or whatever. They didn't try to emulate a 2D style, but they did add 2D textures and 2D particle effects. And I thought that it all coalesced really well into something really beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of the best
Especially
animated
for a TV
shows
show.
I think I've seen.
Yeah, I think the only thing that comes close to this from the past couple of years is the Bad Batch, and I think that in a lot of ways this actually looks better, just because they get to go with their own style that I don't know just works really well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know V constantly showing up to kick Sevka's ass was just hilarious. I found that every time the two met up, and then they were just midway through the fight, they stop, have a drink, and just go back to brawling. I thought that was hilarious.
That was a good fight. I love the Hextech gauntlet she got. That was sick.
Yeah, that was
All
badass.
like the weapons in the show are really cool.
What I love about them is that they very much seem like two people that in a different life would be very good friends, and like almost as much as you said the show has a lot of duality and like people are opposites of each other, to me they seemed almost like the same characters on different ends of the spectrum, just like born into different roles sort of.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation.
Yeah, and so I think that was very cool to see because you sort of don't get all the characters are so fleshed out and unique, and while a lot of them do have relationships and seem like on the same page, we see those ties quickly sever or we see evidence of them coming apart. But with this, it was like these are two very different groups of people with one very similar like person who's trying to think of the bigger picture as best they can, but doesn't always see a way to do it and feels stuck at times.
Yeah. The last thing I have written down on my little sheet here is that when Jinx drew on the mirror after Caitlyn got out of the shower, I was not expecting that at all. And that, like, completely took me by surprise.
It took me by surprise too, and I thought she'd be dead. Honestly,
I thought her head was on that platter when they 100%
for
got
sure.
me. I was like,
Yeah.
holy crap. They really got me there.
And she's like, no, I'm not that messed up. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're that messed up.
Yeah.
You definitely would have done that. But
That was
I'm glad
funny.
Caitlin's not dead.
That was very
'cause
funny.
I'm glad she's not dead, though, because I like her, and I think that the relationship that's sort of starting between her and V is interesting.
I thought it was played
I like
very
that.
tactfully, too, the relationship.
Yeah, I like their dynamic a lot.
Yeah.
Even if it's not romantic, just they're just I don't know what the word is, but like
Chemistry.
I guess
just
the
works well.
relationship. Chemistry just works really, really well. Yeah, so I hope we see more of them. I kind of feel like Caitlyn and V moving forward are going to be like their own thing, and then you're going to have the council that's going to be super radicalized at this point. I think Jace is just gonna go off the wall. I don't know.
Yeah, I think as time goes on, it's going to be less and less of a council and more of a council of advisors to Jace.
Yeah, I think at least a couple of the council members are probably gonna die. I'm gonna guess
I think
that one of them is gonna be his love interest.
You think so? So that's the part I go back and forth about. I think her name is Mel Madara, and she, I think, could have survived because she was warned earlier in this season that her mom came to her and said, "Someone's out to kill you, and that's why I'm here to protect you and everything." So she might have been prepared for some kind of thing and had some kind of protection. So I could see her living through it, but I could also see her dying and being a catalyst for Jace. So I go back and forth on that one. I definitely think there's going to be at least a few dead members of the council. I think the rest of the council is obviously, going to want to go to war. I think Jace, I could see if Mel dies or if she's in a coma or something or just badly injured, Jace is going off the walls, I think, with the Hextech weaponry.
I think so too. Or what'd be really interesting is that even after that, he's still the voice of reason. I think that could be really interesting. I don't see that happening because I think that at least that's what they are presenting to us. I think that he's going to get radicalized further, especially if you've seen his League of Legends character.
Yeah, I think
he's an enforcer. I think so. I think that they're going that way, but I think it would also be cool if, like, even after that, he's so resilient that he's like, no, we still have to figure out a better way to do this. But the rest of the council's like, or that's alive, or if anyone died,
that would be interesting. I don't see it going that way, but I would be interested to see a take on that. I only had a couple cons, and they were really nitpicky. So the first one I had was I did not think that Heimerdinger had good reasoning as for why he felt Hextech shouldn't be made or should be brought slower. He kept saying, "Oh, that's dangerous," but really I think some specific examples really would have benefited his case in a lot of those situations where he could have outlined exactly what happened and exactly why it's so bad, and that might have put a few more restrictions in place. But as everything we saw was just him being like, "No, I don't like it. It could be dangerous. It could be used for dangerous things."
We did get vague flashbacks to some seemingly catastrophic event that happened that he has memory of.
I guess the way I interpret it was that he didn't voice that flashback. Like, the audience was privy to that flashback of destruction, but maybe that was trying to imply that he told them exactly what happened in his past.
I would assume so, but I agree that, like, actually seeing what happened would have been because you're kind of just like, why are you, like, getting in the way?
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like, the scientific method and stuff, but, like, literally, like, there are also urgent things that they need to fix, so it's not. But I also see his point. But you can't just tell people that it could go wrong. You need, like, a concrete example, I suppose.
And I'm not saying he would have stopped anything. I'm just saying that it would have been nice to have him have, like, a more solid argument to the council.
For sure. Though, I mean, even if he had a good or a bad argument, the council, aside from Jace and Mel, seem pretty corrupt. I mean, you see them literally, like, taking money and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I'm not sure how much they would have cared one way or the other. They want what's best for themselves, I think.
Yeah,
And any decision that they're making is not necessarily motivated in the best interest of everybody. It's about the optics of their choices. So, like, how their choices make them look to retain their power, I think.
Well, Jason, the whole council are gonna get that very good example at the start of the next season. So. Of what could go wrong with Hextech.
It's way too late at this point. I mean, they just got to power through.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. Yeah, it's not going to end diplomatically because that wouldn't be very interesting. So,
well, I'm saying, like, the nuke is made from Hextech, so it's already been weaponized to the most extreme it could be.
The nuke.
It was powered by the orb she had. Right?
Oh, the rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that was, like, something I missed. No. I mean, you see what will happen, but I think that the lesson that they're going to take from that is the Undercity can't have this power. We shouldn't be messing with this at all.
Correct.
So I hope they take a little bit of Heimerdinger might have been right, but I guess that's just
a wee bit.
That's a little too hindsighty probably for the council.
Yeah, especially I think that put a lot of responsibility on them that I don't think that they care to have.
The biggest gripe I had with the first season is not as much of a gripe as it is what I'm hoping doesn't happen is they opened a lot of loose ends and kind of coming off of a show that I spent years watching like Game of Thrones that the SS abandoned plot lines was a very real, very over the top done thing, that there was just story after story after story that we just did not get any sort of closure on. I hope that they have, like you said earlier, Ben, some sort of long-term vision for where the show is going, and I hope it gets specific enough to not, like, for example, the guy that was living sort of under the waterfall above ground that Victor stumbled upon, and I think one of our friends told me that pans out to be Singe, which is another character from League of Legends. So I'm assuming because it appears to be one of the main characters from the franchise, he will continue to have his story fleshed out. But we saw, the last time we saw him was like episode, I want to say 5 or 6, and it was we must save the mutation at all costs, and then nothing after that for 3 or 4 episodes. And like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, oh wait, is this ever going to come back? If it's 1 or 2 episodes or maybe 3, I can get it. But like, at some point you got to say, whoa, what about this whole thing that you opened up the can of worms to? And so that was my biggest complaint with the season, was there was a few things that they dangled right in front of your face and didn't give any sort of closure or inclination that it's going to be continued to, at least in the last episode. Like, just seeing him once, seeing something from him would have been nice to know that, okay, it's still being acknowledged.
Yeah, I hope so. Part of the problem with Game of Thrones is that they sort of rushed to end it. I know that George R.R. Martin wanted, I think, an additional 2 seasons of that show.
But there were plots abandoned from season 2 and 3. And
fair. I could see how that can happen to a long-running show, but I also think that that's sort of a symptom of just the creators or people in charge of the show. So, I mean, we'll have to see if they're diligent in that sense, and, you know, they're going to keep their consistency in their world that they've created. Hopefully they don't do that, but I don't know if we'll know for however many seasons. Might not know for another few years if that's going to change. Hopefully they follow up on everything. I would assume that this sort of animation is pretty expensive. It looks expensive
and time consuming.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by expensive, is that it looks like it takes a long time to do. You know, they might have just not brought it back up because of that, you know, or they didn't feel like it fit into the main thrust of this first 9 episodes.
Yeah, it's possible, but I think with animation, the good thing about it is, even if it is an expensive kind of animation is really easy to budget for, because you know how much an episode costs to make, essentially, you know, plus or minus a little bit there. But it's not like CGI that takes significantly longer in certain episodes or not in other episodes, and getting different actors there at certain times and for different lengths. When it's animation like that, I think you can budget it a little better, so then you can plan out the season a little better, if you know what I mean.
Right. It's just sort of a matter of like how many episodes that they ask for.
Yeah.
That Netflix asked for, how many episodes are going to be in each season, how long the episodes are going to be. I mean, they were all roughly the same length, but just those sorts of things. We've definitely seen how poorly scheduled trying to say, Dragon Ball Super, as an example, had a really tumultuous production and pre-production. So and that can just totally destroy an animated show. I don't know who actually animated this, but if it's Western, the philosophy of the animation, the people running it and kind of putting it together, they might not be trying to rush it out as fast as possible. So, you know, it just really, really depends, I guess.
Yeah.
On a few things. It could go either way. I think they saw how well this was received, so I would hope that they would continue that and not say, hey, how do we get more out as quickly as possible? I hope they take their time and, you know, make it really good.
Yeah, I agree. The only other con that I had here was I didn't think they did a good job at explaining why the upper city wants the lower city. Through this entire, I guess maybe they provide some kind of blue collar work, but we never saw them directly working really in Piltover, the upper city, and it seemed like when they closed the bridges and everything, there wasn't really a supply shortage in the upper city, so really what is being provided by the lower city that they want it at all? Why didn't they exile it from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought of that. Just because it's really clear in the show that they don't care about the people living there.
Yeah, if you don't care and they're not providing a service.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's sort of like, why do you even want them if you perceive them as lesser than you anyway? Why not just let them? It might have more to do with a power and control thing. Like, they don't want them becoming their own. That's what I think it is.
Like, as long as it's under their control, right? They can keep it at bay.
They're sort of
to some amount.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is.
And I think
it's
so
less
too,
so
but I
that,
wish
like,
I didn't have to guess or assume certain things. I wish like some of that could be explained, I think. Even if it was like an excerpt or something from like a paragraph from the director, I'd be fine with that. I don't even need to see it in animation.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well,
I
you do
think, but
see
I
sort of
also think that. Go ahead, Lucas.
you do sort of get some things that hint to that being the case, where like we see that there is some connections between the upper city enforcers and what goes on down below, and like there's some sort of behind the curtain things going on there. But like, so you do see them actively going down there in efforts of control sort of regularly, and not, it's not just like they're not just trying to completely ignore it. When they have a problem, they go down there to try to initially solve it, or like immediately solve it. So it's not like they're just ignoring it entirely and
True.
don't
I guess
really
they probably
care.
control all the drug trade too for all those uppers.
That's what, so I'm saying, like they're definitely getting some benefit from it, and they are acknowledging that they need to control it in the show. I don't. Yeah, the director or whoever, the producers or whatever, could come out and say they're only interested in it to keep it under control. But like, I think they do enough in this show to say for that to be implied pretty easily.
Yeah, like I said, it was a nitpicky thing that I had, but it didn't really impact my enjoyment of the show.
I would be interested in seeing them more directly expound on it, but I do agree with Lucas that I think there's enough there that what we're saying is less like headcanon and more like that's definitely what they were going for,
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing. I think it's okay sometimes when movies leave that stuff out, though. When you're telling a story like this, the less room for interpretation, the better. But I guess that also depends on the person. Like for me, I don't like ambiguity in my stories for the most part. I think it's annoying and a cop out. So I could see why that would be a small nitpick for you too at the same time.
Yeah. So that was my only other con. If you guys had another one, feel free to chime in. But I got like a couple bullet points of little things that I think are gonna happen next season. But did you have any cons?
None aside from
Not for-
the hopeful plotline non-abandonment.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, go ahead.
nothing for me either. Maybe we could have gotten some more time with Echo, but
Yeah.
That'll
I
come
don't know.
for sure. I think
I'm really like reaching to find something. I
Yeah.
thought this was just really good start to finish.
Yeah, me too. So one of my things that I have on my list actually is I think we're going to get a lot of Heimerdinger Echo creating some awesome gadgets for Echo to start wrecking things up. So I think we're going to get a lot more of Echo in season 2 actually, because now he's with Heimerdinger and that's kind of a power couple there, you know.
I'm sort of hoping that area that Echo has sort of taken as a, why can I not think of the
Refugee.
word? Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary. I'm hoping with Heimerdinger there, like we really start to see maybe the undercity start flourishing and like expanding out from that main core area rather than trying to like push up through to Piltover. Hopefully
That'd be
we can
cool,
see
but I
sort
think
of
it's going to
grow
start
from the
going downhill
inside.
with the war.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like that place is just an absolute prime target for like a devastating
Yeah,
it goes
a
away
terrible
at some point.
blow.
And then like the Undercity's completely lost hope at that point.
Yeah, with the
Yeah,
dark
I
tone, I can
imagine-
see that.
I imagine that the Undercity, like the bad people there and the good people there, are gonna kind of have to band together against Piltover, just because they're gonna see this attack that's perceived as an attack by the Undercity as a whole, and they're gonna have to band together. I would think Jinx might just continue to be a wild card. I'd be interested to see if she gets a little more of a leadership role. I don't know if she is stable enough to do that, but it could also be interesting because she's not stable at the same
Yeah,
time.
Sort of Joker vibes there.
I think with
Yeah.
her, she's gonna have a very lonely journey without V starting out next season. I think she's gonna be completely alone. This is gonna be the first time where she really doesn't have anybody to tell her what to do or anybody that she looks up to at this point, right? She's kind of off her leash, so to speak, at this point, and I think she's going to have to go through that journey and kind of figure out who she wants to be as an independent woman that doesn't need to answer to Vander or V or Silco or anybody. So I think that's going to be kind of her arc next season.
I think so too.
I think V is going to be at extreme odds, though, with Caitlyn actually next season, because I think when they go to war, that's going to put them in a Romeo-Juliet situation, right? Where they're going to have to fight each other or have to pick a side to stay on a little bit more. So I think that's going to cause some tension.
I think V is ultimately going to have to make a decision more concretely between Jinx and Caitlyn, and she should probably pick Caitlyn. Not be, I mean,
Because she's
Jinx is
stable.
her little sister. Well, no, but like, because Jinx is her little sister, so like, I also understand like she wants to save her. Via feels partly responsible for what happened, though it's not her fault. I mean, she was a child too, basically.
Yeah.
But Caitlyn also isn't trying to make everyone's life worse. I understand Jinx went through something extremely traumatic, so like I empathize with that, but I also don't think that that makes it fine then for her to like make everything horrible for everybody else, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that.
She can try to reach out to Jinx, but I think that at some point V's gonna have to choose because I don't see Jinx changing. At least not anytime soon. Maybe she'll have like a Darth Vader moment and come back at the end.
Yeah.
But actually, I
That'd be
kind of
dope.
see Jace going down the Darth Vader path, becoming an enforcer, becoming like really extreme in order to create order or justice as he sees it.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
I could see that. That was the only stuff that I had left that I haven't already talked about where I think it's going. Did you guys have anything else other than that?
I'll add that I know none of us are very avid League players, but I do dabble in TFT, Teamfight Tactics, and so like I was like privy to a lot of these characters before watching the show, but I didn't really know anything about their lore at all. And I'm very excited to see more of these faces I'm now familiar with working their way into the show, and also to like sort of learn some more of the background lore about the characters themselves from the games pretty much. And like I think that'll just add a whole new depth to the show, that'll just to the world in general, that I think will be really cool to watch pan out over the course of the show. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to. I can see a lot of like openings for them already just based off of the very little knowledge I have of the characters. So there was sort of like, it was fun during some episodes. For example, the first episode that Silco started injecting people with the shimmer, I kept waiting for one of them to become one of the characters I'm waiting to see, and I think will make an appearance at some point. Maybe not quite yet, but I was waiting for that to sort of turn one of them into the character I'm expecting to see. So I'm still waiting on that. So I think having sort of little tidbits like that is really cool to have to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I imagine that people that play the games are like super excited, especially with how well that they've handled it. For me, I guess the one thing beyond what we've talked about is I do hope to see sort of, we got a little bit of it in the show, the season so far, but Heimdinger reflecting a little bit on kind of where he failed, and he very much strikes me as a Yoda character, not just because of his size, but also he kind of like the leader of the council. He's the one that's like in charge of all the science and
Old and wise.
I guess old and wise, and you know, and hex tech is basically, I mean, not basically, it is just magic. So
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to see him reflect and sort of try to make things as right as he can, given his diminished, not power in the sense of like his physical power level, but like power in like politically, sort of like how Yoda has to go into hiding and you know,
Yeah.
ponder the force.
Didn't
and reflect
end
and stuff
super
like that.
well for Yoda either, though.
No, it didn't. But I think he ended on a better place than he was. He probably, actually, we don't even necessarily see Yoda reflecting on his mistakes, but we do see that transition. He is a different person when we see him again in Empire from where we last left him off in Revenge of the Sith. So I'm hoping that we kind of get something at least similar to that, where Heimdinger is in a different headspace now than he was.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Not like the most important thing. That'd just be cool for me personally.
That sort of reminded me of something else, because I think a character we haven't mentioned as much is Victor, and I think it'll be very interesting to see sort of, he's on his own path with the Hex Tech now. So there's sort of three branches of it. You've got the really rinky-dinky Jinx branch, you've got the very orderly, structured Jace branch, and then you have the sort of on-the-fly, very high motivated for self-interest, but also like just adds a very sort of a wild card element to the development of the technology through Victor. And I think I'm very curious to see where his role ends up and I think that's what I'm most excited to watch pan out some, is because Victor could go any which way, good or bad, for either side, and I wouldn't be
I can see
surprised.
that.
I think he's the most malleable character they have right now. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to, is seeing which way
Yeah,
he
that's a
takes
good
it.
call.
Yeah, same. Actually, I'm
Got
actually
that blood
really
magic going.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it can go either way, and it wouldn't be surprising. You could see justification for both given his position, so I'm definitely interested to see where that goes.
Well, I think that's going to probably wrap it up for our discussions here on Arcane. So, have anybody out there seen it? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time. This is the Media Man signing off.